Trauma is simply this. It's anything that changes the way that you see God, yourself, or the world, and it changes it for the worse. So if something happened to you, maybe at church, you were growing up in church and someone hurt your feelings terribly, or maybe even abused you, it would have also changed the way that you saw God. Maybe someone in your family abused you at home, yelled at you, hit you, touched you in ways that were inappropriate, and it changed the way that you saw yourself. It may also have changed the way you saw the world. Who can I trust? And is this a safe place? Do I have to defend myself, cover myself, protect myself by being alone? Trauma changes us on a core space. And in this day and age, there's hardly anyone who has not had an experience that in some way changed the way they see God, themselves, or other people. And it's something that we need to be intentional about recovering from. A lot of times we minimize it. Well, this happened, but was it really that bad? I mean, I'm okay now. It's not that big of a deal. We don't call it a trauma. We don't call it rape. We don't call it abuse. We don't call it what it really was. We just move on thinking that we're fine and it's in the past. But many times a trauma doesn't end after the event happens. It ends when you end it, by disrupting the symptoms and the cycles that it creates in your life. And so I want to encourage you today to begin to think about some of those things that changed you. You may have never really considered how much it changed you until this moment, but it has. And we see this reflected in Scripture as well. I want to talk to you today about the story of Jacob. Remember that old Sunday school story of the twins, Jacob and Esau? They were born and then their mom and dad kind of pick favorites. The Bible says that Jacob was his mom's favorite, but Esau was the dad's favorite. And you know the story. Jacob goes and tricks his father and makes him think that he is his brother so that he can steal his brother's blessing. But one of the things that's unique about this story that I don't often hear spoken about is the fact that this deception was his mother's idea. This woman told her son to go and manipulate his father in order to get something that she wanted that son to have, more than her other son. Well, that's just plain dysfunctional. This woman is pitting her children against each other and then sending her child to deceive his own father. Now, you might be thinking, well, Jacob wasn't really a child. He was a grown man. But that just makes it worse. That means that the abuse and the manipulation had to have started in childhood for her to be able to convince a grown man to say, I'm going to deceive my father, even though he told his mom, I don't want to do it. My dad will be mad at me. My brother will hate me. She said, do it anyway. Let it be on me. And so he did it. It's a horrible thing. And some of you are identifying with that right now. You're thinking about your childhood and how maybe you weren't treated the same way as a brother or sister. Maybe you were the one that seemed to have been chosen for the abuse and you've been wondering, why me? Maybe you were manipulated by your family in ways that hurt you emotionally and ways that make it difficult to go to holiday dinners right now because that emotional manipulation or that verbal abuse is still alive. And you still find yourself willing to work with it. You might be 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, but when mother says this or dad says this, it's like you're 7 years old again and you just go through the motions, doing what the pattern has always been and wondering when you'll ever be able to break free. And so Jacob goes through with this and he deceives his father and his fears come true. He loses his relationship with his father and his brother is so angry he's trying to kill him. And so Jacob is sent away to go and hide from the wrath of his brother. And I want to draw attention specifically to this part of the story that's told in Genesis chapter 28, verses 10 through 25 and 20 through 21. In this passage, we find Jacob alone. He has run away from his family. He's on his way to another place and he stops and lies down in the wilderness somewhere with a rock for his pillow. He had a family. He had a place to stay. He had connection. He wasn't alone, but now he's alone. And sometimes trauma disconnects us from our loved ones, disconnects us from family. Maybe you feel like you've had to extract yourself because the environment is toxic in a way that's killing you. And so you recognize you needed to go away, but where do you go when you go away? And sometimes feeling alone can feel worse than even being toxically connected because of that trauma. So Jacob is out there all by himself. He lies down on a rock to fall asleep and he has a dream. And in this dream, there's a ladder that reaches from the earth all the way to heaven. God is standing at the top of that ladder, speaking a word about blessings to the generations that are to come after him. And he sees angels going up and down this ladder. And I remember reading that and thinking, God, what is this ladder? And do you know what the Lord revealed to me? That ladder represents generations. There's only one structure in our body that looks like a ladder. It's our DNA. DNA is literally a ladder. It's just twisted a little bit, but it is a ladder. I believe that that ladder that went from heaven down to earth was representing our literal DNA, because our DNA can actually be changed by trauma. When something happens to you that breaks you, it actually changes your DNA in a way that can be passed down from generation to generation. When a mother is very stressed when she is pregnant, it can alter how the chemistry of that baby's brain is working so that the child may be born more prone to be anxious, more prone to be stressed. So some of you were born broken in this space because of what your mother or father may have been going through at the time that you were developing in the womb. But it is not over. Jacob saw this ladder being dealt with. Angels going up. So this is the generations before you, and angels coming down, the generations to come. And knowing through that vision that God could make a change in what was going on. Jacob's family had been messed up for a minute. His father's mother was Sarah. Y'all remember her, Abraham's wife, who decided that she would get her husband to go on out there and sleep with the maidservant and get her baby that way. But then she got mad and didn't want that baby around, so she made him leave. And so now these people are thrown out in the wilderness. The family is broken, again, through a manipulation. So that manipulation is running in the family. Then Jacob's mother manipulates. Jacob goes on to Laban's house where he wants to marry a beautiful girl named Rachel, but he gets tricked into marrying another woman, her sister, Leah. So manipulation and trickery is following this family from generation to generation to generation. But that ladder was a representation that your DNA is not your destiny. God is moving up and down that space, looking to break some things for you. But Jacob was so broken in that moment from the trauma, he couldn't see that. He saw that ladder, and his prayer was, Father, I will bless this place and I will serve you and you'll be my God if you will take care of me. Give me a place to stay, clothes to wear, food to eat. Jacob was in the presence of this great vision, but the loneliness and the isolation that trauma had caused left him only able to pray one thing. God, will you just protect me and take care of me? Many of you are in that place where trauma has shaken you so much. Your prayers are stopped right at that level. Just, God, if I could just stop being injured by other people, if I could just not have to worry about feeling safe. That's the extent of the prayer. Forget praying about your purpose, your business, your college degree, your desires. You can't even rise to that level. You're just at survival level prayer because of the pain that has been wrought in your life. And so that's where Jacob was, and he leaves that space. But he does go on to do something about it. He comes back years later, prepared to make amends with his brother Esau. And when he meets Esau, Esau falls on his neck and they reunite. And so he disrupted some of the trauma in his life by reuniting with his brother. And this is super important because Jacob has those 12 sons. Remember those 12 sons? And one of them's name is Joseph. And Joseph gets sold away by his brother and gets a disruption with his brother. And that's another generational trauma break. But Joseph ends up saving the family because he's willing to make up with his brothers. And that was what happened with his father, who made up with his brother. And so the point there is that you can make a difference in your family line. You can repair some trauma. You can go back and fix it up front. You can go forward and have it be fixed for your grandchildren. But before you can do any of that, you have to fix it in yourself. And so I want to encourage you today. If those traumas now are coming back to your memory, for some of you, it was quick. You know exactly what happened. But for others, it's rising up and you're remembering the sexual abuse, the verbal abuse. You're remembering the betrayal of friends that broke your heart or the marriage that fell apart. You're remembering these things. These are all trauma episodes. You're remembering when someone told you you were too fat, too skinny, too ugly, too stupid. Those are traumatic moments. If they change the way that you see yourself, you're remembering those things and you're thinking, I do want to change them if I have the courage to even stay in the presence of them, because it's so painful. But we have to stay in the presence of a problem to solve a problem. And so I want to encourage you right now. I think you want to go to therapy. It's a wonderful, safe place for you to begin to process your trauma and to recover from your trauma and to finally end the trauma by eradicating from your life the symptoms of the trauma that are still echoing through. Your brokenness was not your fault, but here you are. It's on you to heal. Your healing is your responsibility.